Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on a lightly dusted snow Market Street. Thank you for joining us. It's good to be back after a little bit of a break. We had some comments from over the weekend, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about this morning. This is normally kind of a slower news cycle this time of year, but not with all the excitement in Washington. Yes, Joe Biden, pardoning his son. Were you surprised? I would say I'm not surprised. I think if you recall on this program, I predicted that I'd be shocked if he didn't end up pardoning Hunter Biden. We're going to give you some of the details on that, what former president and President-elect Donald Trump is saying about it, what some other politicians are saying about it. But first up, comments from viewers. To the viewer from Lindley, hello there. We will find out more about Sheriff Allard's battle with the legislature and with Steuben County. He will be on the program on Wednesday, so I don't have specifics of what can be done. But this viewer believes that the legislature should pay back the wasted $200,000 spent. It's time to clean house from the White House to Steuben County. Time for action against apathy and incompetence. I hear Letitia James and Alvin Bragg might need a job. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. Hope you've enjoyed your holiday. I hope you did too. I just caught a story that I hope you or your viewers or this week's guests can help me understand. Andrew Cuomo is going to serve on Benjamin Netanyahu's defense team. We largely know how the Dems feel about Israel. I seriously need feedback as I find it insane, and to think he is worming his way back into office is extremely disheartening in my opinion. Well, thank you for that comment, and we will, if we get a chance, we'll ask maybe a Phil Palmisano on Friday or Joe Semplinsky, who is an assemblyman-elect and former congressman. We'll ask him on Thursday. I had just heard about it. Well, it came out the other day, but that Andrew Cuomo has joined Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's legal defense team as the Jewish leader and his former defense chief Yoav Gallant face arrest warrants from the International Criminal Court over their ongoing response to Hamas's October 7th, 2023 terrorist attack. We talked about this International Criminal Court and what a joke they've become. Cuomo, a three-term Democrat who resigned in 2021 amid harassment allegations he has personally denied, also rallied against anti-Semitism in a recent dinner with leaders of New York's Jewish community. Now, many see this as an opportunity for him when he's running for mayor, because it's been anonymous sources, so take it with a grain of salt, but there are sources that are suggesting that he is going to announce very soon that he'll be running for New York City mayor, and this would only help him being at Netanyahu's legal defense, because I believe New York City has the biggest population of Jewish residents outside of Israel. Cuomo condemned what he characterized as whitewashing Hamas's kidnappings and murders in Israel, telling the National Committee for Furtherance of Jewish Education he is proud to join Netanyahu's defense. He condemned the denial that too many people and institutions have about the scourge of anti-Semitism. He did speak out at one time about the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses. Cuomo said, he said, this is the moment that is going to be in the history books. This is a pivotal moment, and this is the moment when true friends stand shoulder to shoulder and fight for the state of Israel. I am proud to be on the legal defense team of the Prime Minister against the arrest warrants at the ICC, and I'm proud to stand against anti-Semitism. The ICC charged Netanyahu and Gallant with crimes against humanity and war crimes, setting off a global firestorm as signatories to the court's jurisdiction found themselves at odds with non-party allies like the U.S. So just an update. A lot of this, I think, comes from the fact that he is mulling that mayoral run. But yes, a lot of questions why Netanyahu would want him on that team. Now, the warrants from the ICC caused bipartisan outrage on Capitol Hill. You had John Fetterman, Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, Jared Markowski, Richie Torres, all in agreement that they were opposed to this outrage. Cuomo is rumored to be considering a 2025 mayoral run in New York City. Oh, here we go, which is the home to the largest Jewish community in the U.S. During his remarks, he cited the 1.6 million Jews in the Big Apple and said Hamas is demonstrating in the streets with masks while Jewish people are afraid to wear yarmulkes or Stars of David in public. This cannot happen in the state of New York. So that is a Cuomo update, not to start the program necessarily on that, but I found that a great question from that viewer. It should come as no surprise that he would want to join that legal team. Number one, making him look better for his mayoral run. But he has been pretty outspoken on this anti-Semitism roiling New York City with protests in the street. Not just that and I know I always say this, but it's not just on college campuses. We sometimes focus on that because there were more with the encampments and the like. But remember, on October 7th, they were marching in the streets, the Hamas protesters, anti-Semitic, anti-police, anti-American protesters, marching in the streets of New York City. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, to that viewer. I posed a question, and I would love to hear from you. Were you surprised by the Hunter Biden pardon? I've got to say I was not surprised. But we are going to get some reaction to that. We're also going to talk a little bit about Trump's cabinet, because he has not done, as you've undoubtedly been made aware over the weekend, been very busy getting more people into his cabinet and his administration. We'll talk about that and the likelihood of who will get in and who won't. And some strange bedfellows. We had Bernie Sanders actually agreeing with Elon Musk on Doge. We'll talk about that as well. But how about this? Take this for whatever it's worth, or whatever sign or omen you see it as. Sales of Bibles are booming, fueled by first-time buyers and some new versions of the Bible being put out. Publishers attribute a 22% jump in Bible sales this year to rising anxiety, a search for hope, or highly focused marketing and designs. Worries about the economy, conflicts abroad, and uncertainty over the election pushed readers toward the publication in droves, that publication of the Bible. Bible sales are up 22% in the U.S. through the end of October, compared with the same period last year. By contrast, total U.S. print book sales were up less than 1% in that period. Quote, people are experiencing anxiety themselves, or they're worried for their children and grandchildren, said Jeff Crosby, president of the Evangelical Christian Publishers Association. It's related to artificial intelligence, election cycles, all that feeds to a desire for assurance, and that everything is going to be okay. Well, then they go through and interview specific people on what Bible they bought. But if you remember, in March, President-elect Donald Trump endorsed the God Bless the USA Bible, which you could buy online for $60. But that number was not figured in this jump in 22% increase in sales on the Bible. The demands for Bibles is rising despite evidence that the country is growing increasingly secularized. The Pew Research Center found that about 28% of adults in the U.S. now consider themselves religiously unaffiliated. Yet Bible sales rose to 14.2 million in 2023 from 9.7 million in 2019 and hit 13.7 million in the first 10 months of this year. Readers are also stocking up on related titles that provide guidance, insight, and context, even sets of stickers with meaningful passages. Sales of other holy books, such as the Hebrew Bible, the Quran, and others, aren't broken down separately into that category. So we'll keep whatever that says to you. Bibles are booming. All right, we've got a lot to cover this morning. As I mentioned, Sheriff Aller is going to be in on Wednesday. We actually have, I think, most days this week, we may even have two guests. Because we're just so busy right now. There's so much going on, so many charitable organizations. Remember, on December 13th, by the way, we're going to have our Salvation Army Telethon. We'll be telling you more about that. Some big announcements coming on that. So make sure you stay tuned. But on Wednesday, Sheriff Allard will be joining us. On Thursday, former Congressman and now Assemblyman-elect Joe Sempolinski on Thursday. And then on Friday will be, it's Friday, so it's got to be Fridays with Phil. Phil Palmisano will be joining us, the Assemblyman, on Friday live in the studio. So get your questions in for any of those guests. I always appreciate that. When we come back, we are going to talk about President Biden pardoning his son Hunter. We'll read the statement that he released on the matter, and we'll get some reaction because it did break yesterday night. So appropriate enough, missed all the Sunday talk shows, which would have made it a big topic. But this is a reversal for the president, who repeatedly said he would not use his executive authority to pardon his son or commute his sentence. It came up not that long ago at a press conference, or at the press briefing, where, again, Karine Jean-Pierre denied that he was going to pardon him. But we're going to talk about that when we come back. I don't want to run too late. Just getting warmed up here as we get back from a little bit of vacation. So I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. And we'll be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Have you been unable to work for over a year due to a mental or physical disability?
Were you recently denied Social Security disability benefits? Great news. You may be eligible for money, back pay, relief.
If you've been pre-qualified and diagnosed with a recognized condition that prohibits you from working, our lawyers can file a claim to get your disability benefit.
Call us today and find out more.
Call now, 844-617-0440.
The holiday season has arrived, a time where more than ever our thoughts turn gratefully to those who serve our community and those all around us. May the holiday season end the present year on a cheerful note and make way for a fresh and bright new year. Here's wishing you a happy holidays. This holiday greeting is brought to you by our friends at Tom South Corning Collision, Sheddon's Wholesale, Suburban Propane, Corning Building Company, Empire Bricks, Hector Wine Company, and Apple Ridge Senior Living.
Stock up for the holidays at GCP with amazing specials. 750 milliliter Kendall Jackson Chardonnay, normally $14.99, is now $12.99. Save more with mail-in rebate of $2 a bottle or $24 a case. And 750 milliliter Corbel Champagne, normally $13.99, on sale for $11.99 a bottle. Save $20 on 6 bottles or $50 on a case with mail-in rebate. GCP Discount Liquors and Wines and Horseheads, the best in service, selection, and price.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history making.
Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us. A comment from a viewer. As a show of good faith, he should give a blanket pardon to January 6ers and President Trump. I don't see Biden doing that, but I know Trump hinted towards that with the January 6th protesters. This is what Joe Biden said yesterday in his statement released last night. Today, I signed a pardon for my son, Hunter. From the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision-making, and I kept my word even as I've watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. Without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon as a straw purchaser, people are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a gun form. Those who were late paying their taxes because of serious addictions but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties are typically given non-criminal resolutions. It is clear that Hunter was treated differently. Now, nothing's new here, though, so why deny that you're going to do this consistently? But I'll continue. The charges in this case came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. Then a carefully negotiated plea deal, agreed to by the Department of Justice, unraveled in the courtroom, with a number of my political opponents in Congress taking credit for bringing political pressure on the process. Had the plea deal held, it would have been a fair, reasonable resolution of Hunter's case. That was that sweetheart plea deal that we talk so often about that no one, you or me, no one would get. No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's case can reach any other conclusion that Hunter was singled out because he is my son. And that is wrong. There's been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. For my entire career, I have followed a simple principle. Just tell the American people the truth. They'll be fair-minded. Here's the truth. I believe in the justice system, but as I have wrestled with this, I also believe raw politics has infected this process and has led to a miscarriage of justice. And once I made this decision this weekend, there's no sense in delaying it further. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. Well, you can tell by that last line he is expecting some pushback on this, and there has been a lot of pushback. But again, so giving him a full and unconditional pardon for any offenses Hunter Biden has, quote, committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 through December 1st, 2024. Wow. That's quite a blanket statement, isn't it? A senior White House official told NBC News, which was the first to report on the pardon decision, that the president decided over the weekend to grant his son a pardon and began to inform his senior aides on Sunday. Now, I'm not going to go through and keep reading the statement. That's why I wanted to read the whole statement. Now, a representative for special counsel, David Wise, did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Hunter Biden's attorney, Abe Lowell, declined to comment as well. Stephen Chung, a spokesman for President-elect Donald Trump, said the failed witch hunts against President Trump have proven that the Democrat-controlled DOJ and other radical prosecutors are guilty of weaponizing the justice system. That system of justice must be fixed and due process must be restored to all Americans, which is exactly what President Trump will do as he returns to the White House with an overwhelming mandate from the American people. Now, I mean, back in June, July, all the way up through November, there was denial that he would pardon Hunter. But again, breaking that promise. Now, claiming that Hunter Biden unfairly prosecuted. Again, it doesn't come as a surprise. This is a good time for him to do it, as it'll get somewhat buried on a Sunday, get somewhat buried. There will be a lot of talks of it initially. The about face comes after the president, who played a recurring role in the Chinese and Ukrainian business relationships involved in the tax case, previously claimed he would not pardon Hunter. Yes, this also, think of this pardon on Hunter also protects Joe Biden in many ways. Hunter Biden pleaded guilty in September to 9 counts tied to bilking Americans of $1.4 million in taxes and was found guilty of 3 federal gun charges in June after he was charged with possession of a firearm while addicted to illegal drugs. But to play the victim here, after the only reason they didn't get that plea deal was because Hunter Biden's lawyers got so cocky, if you recall. Oh, thank you for the waves, by the way. Saying, oh, we want a better deal. And basically this unconditional time frame that he now has with his pardon, which is up until yesterday. Amazing. Again, I don't want to read the whole statement. The pardons language, which was posted online along with the president's statement, covers all offenses committed by Hunter against the United States between January 1st, 2014 and December 1st, 2024. So nearly 10 years, including any crimes he has not been charged for. I'm not even sure how that works with a pardon. What if something were to happen during that time that we were not aware of? He's no longer charged with that? That doesn't seem like justice. But again, this coming from the party that has weaponized the judicial system and used lawfare against former president, now president-elect Donald Trump. Very interesting. But saying that it was instigated for them to attack me, meaning Joe Biden, and oppose my election. Hunter was never charged with FARA violations, despite charges announced last year against a businessman who worked with one of the same Chinese firms. The pardon prevents Hunter from facing those foreign lobby charges, which have 5-year statutes of limitations. Now, again, it's really interesting when you hear about the big guy and the money that is alleged that Joe Biden made off of some of these business dealings. So this not only protects Hunter, obviously, in a interesting way, also protecting Joe Biden. Very interesting. In a statement released by his legal team to news outlets, Hunter said, quote, "I've admitted and taken responsibility for my mistakes during the darkest days of my addiction. Mistakes that have been exploited to publicly humiliate and shame me and my family for political sport. Despite all of this, I've maintained my sobriety for more than 5 years because of my deep faith and unwavering love and support of my family and friends. In the throes of addiction, I squandered many opportunities and advantages. In recovery, we can be given the opportunity to make amends where possible and rebuild our lives if we never take for granted the mercy that we have been afforded. I will never take the clemency I have been given today for granted and will devote the life I have rebuilt to helping those who are sick and suffering. Now, Shapley and Ziegler, the IRS whistleblowers, said the outcome was a sad day for law-abiding taxpayers that showed a special privilege for the powerful. No amount of lies or spin can hide the simple truth. The Justice Department nearly let the president's son off the hook for multiple felonies. We did our duty. We told them and followed the law. Anyone reading the president's excuses now should remember that Hunter Biden admitted to his tax crimes in federal court, that Hunter Biden's attorneys have targeted us for our lawful whistleblower disclosures, and that we are suing one of those attorneys for smearing us with false accusations. President Biden has the power to put his thumb on the scales of justice for his son, but at least he had to do it with a pardon, explicitly for all the world to see, rather than his political appointees doing it secretly behind the scenes. We're going to talk about what President-elect Donald Trump has said about this issue on Truth Social. Now, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, who's been very active in this and helped lead the impeachment inquiry, said, quote, Joe Biden has lied from start to finish about his family's corrupt influence peddling activities. Not only has he falsely claimed that he never met with his son's foreign business associates and that his son did nothing wrong, but he also lied when he said he would not pardon Hunter Biden. The charges Hunter faced were just the tip of the iceberg in the blatant corruption that President Biden and the Biden crime family have lied about to the American people. This again, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer. It's unfortunate that rather than come clean about their decades of wrongdoing, President Biden and his family continue to do everything they can to avoid accountability. End quote. We're going to talk more about this. I don't want to run too late. What are your thoughts? Were you surprised by the news? I've got to say I wasn't surprised. Even though, if you recall, Donald Trump said he'd be open to at least hearing the argument of pardoning Hunter Biden just to, kind of bridge this divide that the country has. I don't know if anything would have actually come out of that. And I think that's what Joe Biden was thinking as well. Getting this done before, as the clock ticks, he is a lame duck president. Kind of reminiscent of the last-minute pardons by Bill Clinton. No, but that was closer to, that might have even been his last day. I can't quite remember. But Joe Biden pardoning Hunter. We're going to talk more about that when we come back. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, it's haunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
And Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon. Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is Frankly Speaking, Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Hakam. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to viewer comments, shall we? No surprise here, this meaning the Hunter Biden pardon. No surprise here, considering the way they have been using lawfare. It was more expected than a surprise. The surprise would have been if he didn't pardon him. Yeah, it did just seem like a matter of when, not a matter of if. And I would agree with that. Ken writes in, hi Ken, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. I hope you did too. As I'm sure you heard, Biden did what he said he wouldn't do, but any thinking person knew he would do it. He pardoned his son for any crimes known and unknown from 2014 to today. The travesty isn't that he and his handlers have always planned on pardoning Hunter, but lied to the American people, pretending that no one was above the law. The real travesty is that in the process of lying to America, they allowed millions of taxpayer dollars to be spent on the trials, knowing that it was a waste of our money. The bright side is that only Hunter was unconditionally pardoned for his crimes over the past 10 years. The entire Biden crime family was not pardoned. Let's hope that Kash Patel is a man of his word and really believes that people who commit crimes against the American people should be brought to justice, which would include Biden, his brother, his wife, and any other family member that profited from the treasonous act of selling and giving access to America. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for that comment. One last comment from a viewer. Cuomo and Hochul are a disgrace. Bring back the Tappanese Bridge. Yes, because it's now the Mario Cuomo Bridge, which was interesting. Speaking of Hochul, just quickly, and this coming from the Corning leader, but did you see that Hochul vetoed the creation of that Rural Suicide Prevention Council? This really doesn't make sense. The leader, quoting Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, I'm incredibly angry about the veto. I don't understand it. The council was meant to cut through government bureaucracy and address what I think would be life-saving solutions. Joe Tobia and his wife, Elisa. But Joe Tobio, you recall, has been on this program in the past, running for legislature. He is on the Steuben County legislature just as of recently. They lost their son to suicide, and they've been very outspoken in the need to do this Rural Suicide Prevention Council. Joe Tobia is saying it's upsetting, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not done. The governor and state officials are going to hear from me again next year, believe me. This is something that needs to be happened. Now, the bill was passed unanimously in both houses earlier this year. The council is geared to examine the barriers to mental health and substance abuse treatment and prevention services. It would also issue actionable recommendations on legislation, policy, and funding to help reduce rates of suicide and suicidal attempts among rural residents. Now, I don't understand, honestly, why Hochul would have vetoed this. This was among a package of 29 bills that were vetoed by Hochul recently. The governor estimated the total price tag for the various bills would cost the state around $24 million. That hasn't been accounted for in the state's financial plan, saying without appropriate funding, these unbudgeted costs would create significant staffing and other problematic burdens on state agencies. Additionally, because of the ongoing work of state agencies and authorities, a number of proposals would result in duplication and unnecessary bureaucracy. Think about that. How much money she spends on those tax cuts for Hollywood, how much money is wasted. But boy, as soon as you put rural or upstate into something, you don't have much of a chance, do you? Assemblyman Palmisano saying, I'm more than disappointed. Hochul said there was dollars associated with this bill that needed to be part of the budget. She's the governor, so put it in the budget. Anyway, that was just a side note to that viewer's comment. Back to the Hunter Biden pardon. So he gets, think about that. January 1st of 2014 to December 1st of 2024, so almost 10 years, a blanket pardon for crimes known and unknown. Also going back to his addiction. So he formally accepted the president's grant of a pardon. I declare or certify, verify, or state under penalty of perjury under the law of the United States of America that the foregoing is true and correct. But anyway, we already read what Hunter Biden had to say. But this goes back to how many times did Joe Biden say he wasn't going to pardon his son? It's unbelievable. Yes, Hunter Biden saying, I have admitted and taken responsibility for my mistakes during the darkest days of my addiction. Mistakes that have been exploited to publicly humiliate and shame me and my family for political sport. Despite all of this, I've maintained my sobriety for more than 5 years because of my deep faith and the unwavering love and support of my family and friends. In the throes of addiction, I squandered many opportunities and advantages. In recovery, we can be given the opportunity to make amends where possible and rebuild our lives. If we never take for granted the mercy that we have been afforded. I will never take this clemency I have been given today for granted and will devote the life I have rebuilt to helping those who are sick and suffering. Your thoughts? It was one of those stories when it broke yesterday. It almost made you think, I just assumed this was going to happen. I thought maybe we had missed it during Thanksgiving or, that it would come up around Christmas time. So going back to what so many viewers are saying, it was a matter of when, not a matter of if. So not really surprised, but Joe Biden lying about it for quite some time. It kind of became a part of when he was still campaigning. That question would come up when he was still running for president. And he continuously, Karine Jean-Pierre, and others continuing to say that they would not pardon Hunter Biden. But again, no surprise. In the first White House press briefing after the election, Karine Jean-Pierre answered flatly no when asked whether the president intended to pardon his son in the lame duck period before January. From the White House transcript on November the 7th, so not even a month ago. Hunter is also up for being sentenced next month. Does the president have any intention of pardoning him? Jean-Pierre said, we've been asked that question multiple times, and our answer stands, which is no. Jean-Pierre had given similar answers over and over again, even saying there was no possibility of a pardon. Biden himself told David Muir of ABC News in a June interview that he had ruled out a pardon for his son. Again, though, it does not, but lying to the country for all that time does not surprise me. Saying that Muir asked Biden on Thursday if he would accept the outcome of his son's trial in Delaware, to which the president said yes. Biden also yes when asked by Muir if he had ruled out a pardon for Hunter. Unbelievable. All right, we got some more to talk about with this. It's going to be a pretty big topic for the show. We do have some other issues with Donald Trump's cabinet that we'll be talking about. Some interesting numbers just to look at from New York State, still kind of dissecting the voting numbers after the election. We'll talk about that as well. But we have to take a short break, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
Shop and compare.
Shop and compare.
Shop and compare.
Shop and compare.
Times may change, but one thing stays the same.
Shop and compare.
You won't find a better deal. Guaranteed.
Shop and compare.
Come sit and sleep shop in Corning. Shop and compare.
Hey, boss. Okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
You sure?
I said I'm fine.
Since I was little, it was only like me and my parents.
You think you created family out of characters?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna take that, make it into a song.
Put me to bed, see you in the morning. With the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it. And we lost it. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at on the way out? In my head, in my head, in my head.
Hey, son.
Hey, Pop.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
Todd's in the hospital.
From vaping. Promise you won't vape, Emma.
not cool.
Wacky sitcom teens aren't the best people to talk to your kid about vaping.
Hey, you got a minute?
You are. Talk to your child about vaping today.
Football's newest show breaks down all things NFL. GMFB Overtime.
Check out top highlights, player interviews, special guests, and everything in between. 5 days a week.
GMFB Overtime. It's football for everyone.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
The Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. I had that story and it didn't print out. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I can't find it now. Where someone that works for New York City for New York City for the job title of diversity, some type of diversity expert. Did you see over the weekend that she was busted tearing down Israeli hostage posters and saying some really vicious things? And that made me think, on Wednesday is the Rockefeller Center's Christmas tree lighting. And it'll be interesting. That's at 8 p.m. It'll be interesting to see if there are protests like there were last year. They use that as an opportunity, the anti-Semitic protesters. Oh, my goodness. We had so many comments coming in that I missed. But if there'll be anti-Semitic protests at the Christmas tree lighting. They always seem to, like, even on college campuses, they protested on Veterans Day. They believe that gives them more of a, I guess, soapbox, if you will. Just if you're curious, the tree is topped with a star that has 3 million sparkling crystals on its 70 spikes and will be decorated with 50,000 LED lights on 5 miles of wire. For the first time since 1959, the country's most famous Christmas tree came from Massachusetts. So we're talking about the pardon. We have so many comments. I apologize. I ran out to get a drink, and here's a couple. I'm thinking that since Hunter got pardoned, it also wouldn't be surprising if he returned back to his old ways. Interesting. Joe Biden's Christmas shopping for Hunter is all done with that pardon, that's for sure. Maybe that's what he was thinking. Save himself a little money. We're going to get to your comments here in just a little bit. Everybody else who wrote in, I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to go through all of them. So Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump, posted on Truth Social in response to Hunter Biden's pardon. Does the pardon given by Joe to Hunter include the J6 hostages who have now been imprisoned for years? Such an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Now, the 45th president, who won back the White House last month, floated pardons during his campaign for the more than 1,500 defendants, either still facing trials or those already convicted for breaching the Capitol, as Congress was voting to certify Biden's 2020 election win over Trump. Trump's transition team earlier sent out a statement that blasted the Justice Department while vowing to fix the federal agency. It made no mention of Biden or his son. But they said at the time the failed witch hunts against President Trump have proven that the Democrat-controlled DOJ and other radical prosecutors are guilty of weaponizing the justice system. The system of justice must be fixed and due process must be restored for all Americans, which is exactly what President Trump will do as he returns to the White House with an overwhelming mandate from the American people. Now, Hunter is now off the hook after he was scheduled to be sentenced on separate federal gun and tax evasion cases later this month. The first son pled guilty back in September to 9 counts tied to bilking the government of $1.4 million in taxes. You know this. And was convicted of 3 federal gun charges in June for possessing a firearm while addicted to crack cocaine. The excuse that he was unfairly or selectively and unfairly prosecuted. Well, if you thought that would be the case, why did you wait until December the 1st to do this pardon? And tell us, continue to tell us, because nothing happened from when he said on November 7th that he wasn't going to pardon him to today. I mean, the sentencing has not happened. That was to come at the end of the month. So it's very, very interesting to try to kind of weasel your way out of knowing on an issue will get pushback. Even some Democrats, which we'll get to a little bit later on in the program, Democrats not happy with this decision, saying Joe blew this one, that this was not a good call by Joe Biden. Others saying, hey, congratulations, good move. We'll get to that as well. Congressional Republicans, though, ripped into President Biden after he issued that pardon to Hunter, hammering the lame duck commander-in-chief for reversing his vow not to intervene in Hunter's federal criminal cases. Biden faced scathing criticism soon after he announced he had pardoned Hunter Biden, who is, you know about what he was convicted. Quote, I am shocked President Biden pardoned his son Hunter because he said many, many times he wouldn't, and I believed him. Shame on me, said Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley. Most Americans can sympathize with a father's decision to pardon his son, even if they disagree, said Tom Cotton. What they can't forgive is Biden lying about it repeatedly before the election. And I think that's a good point by Tom Cotton. I can see where someone would say, okay, I disagree with what Joe Biden's doing, but at the end of the day, it's his son, so I'm not surprised. His son being very loyal behind the scenes. But why lie to the American people so frequently about this? And this was Karine Jean-Pierre, but saying back in less than a month ago that there was going to be no pardon for Hunter Biden. We've been asked that November 8th. I'm sorry. Karine Jean-Pierre said, we've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no on a pardon. Representative James Comer, who chaired one of the probes into the Biden family, said the criminal charges against Biden were just the tip of the iceberg. Joe Biden had lied from start to finish about his family's corrupt influence peddling activities. Not only has he falsely claimed that he never met with his son's former business associates and that his son did nothing wrong, but he also lied when he said he would not pardon Hunter Biden. The charges Hunter faced were just the tip of the iceberg and the blatant corruption that President Biden and the Biden crime family have lied about to the American people. It's unfortunate that rather than come clean about their decades of wrongdoing, President Biden and his family continue to do everything they can to avoid accountability. Not all Democrats are happy about this. Now, this good point here. An impeachment inquiry was opened last year to probe whether Biden engaged in abuse of power and obstruction of justice or obstruction of Congress before it was dropped after the 82-year-old Democrat dropped his re-election bid. Representative Jim Jordan posted, Democrats said there was nothing to our impeachment inquiry. If that's the case, why did Joe Biden just issue Hunter Biden a pardon for the very things we were inquiring about? That's a good point from Representative Jim Jordan. Representative Jim Banks saying Joe Biden issued a pardon to Hunter Biden for any crimes that he might have committed since 2014. Why such a specific year? Well, Hunter Biden just so happened to join the board of Burisma, a Ukraine energy firm, in that same year, 2014. So corrupt. We're going to talk about this and read all your comments when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
The holiday season has arrived, a time where more than ever our thoughts turn gratefully to those who serve our community and those all around us. May the holiday season end the present year on a cheerful note and make way for a fresh and bright new year. Here's wishing you a happy holidays. This holiday greeting is brought to you by our friends at Tom South Corning Collision, Sheddon's Wholesale, Suburban Propane, Corning Building Company, Empire Bricks, Hector Wine Company, and Apple Ridge Senior Living.
Now you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, the portable oxygen concentrator that moves with you.
This little box changed my life. I can now do all those things that I want to do. You just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen portable oxygen systems are small and light and deliver up to 12 hours of medical-grade oxygen on a single charge.
Now that I've got my Inogen, I've got my freedom back. I'm back to living again.
Try an Inogen system free for 14 days. Call now.
Contact Boss Security today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio, going to some viewer comments. Ken asking, let's think about why the suicide prevention bill was vetoed by Hochul's handlers. Could it be that it would help and spend money on rural areas that are mostly Republican? Yeah, anytime she hears upstate or rural New York, she's not going to take it up full-throated, that's for sure. Next up, a comment from a different viewer. Joe has to be driving the media crazy once again. They so much wanted to drive the "we hate Kash Patel" thing, and now Joe does this predictable pardon. Even John Bolton, the Dr. Seuss Lorax, was out on Sunday making sure that we knew what he thought of Patel. Yeah, that was, they don't even hide it. It's in the headline at this point. Conspiracy theorist was one of the terms I've heard. Election denier or something else. There's a whole laundry list. We're going to get to it in a little bit. Next up, a different comment from a different viewer. Biden pardon is a slap in the face to American justice system. I believe it was orchestrated by Jill, as Joe doesn't even know what time it is. Thankful that the world's most expensive nursing home closes in January. Thank you very much. And final comment from a different viewer. Closing the border could have been Joe Biden's Christmas present to the American people. I don't see that happening. Now, Colorado Governor Jared Polis skewered Joe Biden over the Hunter pardon, saying becoming the first Democrat to challenge the lame duck president. Colorado Democrat Governor Jared Polis blasted Biden's pardon of his son, saying that Biden put his family ahead of the country and the move could tarnish his reputation. And there's a lot of talk, and I think some of this does have to do with that idea that he stayed in too long. So they're trying to punish him in a way. Now they're talking about his legacy and your legacy is going to be World War III because we see how he's handling things with Ukraine. They're questioning this pardon as being a threat to his legacy, trying to stick one last knife in the back of Joe Biden on his way out the door. The stinging rebuke from the possible 2028 presidential contender, and don't think for a moment that's not why Jared Polis did this, came as Biden prepared to fly for an official visit to Angola, limiting his exposure to questions about the pardon. Polis tweeting out, while as a father, I certainly understand President Joe Biden's natural desire to help his son by pardoning him. I'm disappointed that he put his family ahead of the country. This is a bad precedent that could be abused by later presidents and will sadly tarnish his reputation. When you become president, your role is paterfamilias of the nation. Wow. Hunter brought the legal trouble he faced on himself, and one can sympathize with his struggles while also acknowledging that no one is above the law, not a president and not a president's son. So definitely some tough talk from, considered a 2028 contender anyway, Colorado Democrat Governor Jared Polis. Polis, who founded Pro Flowers, if you didn't know, before serving as a congressman from 2009 to 2019, and as governor since 2019, was quickly joined in condemnation by Greg Stanton. Greg Stanton, where was his quote? I had that right here ahead of me. Here we go. Representative Greg Stanton, Democrat from Arizona, saying, I respect President Biden, but I think he got this one wrong. This wasn't a politically motivated prosecution. Hunter committed felonies and was convicted by a jury of his peers. Yeah, and I understand the president being upset, but with not getting that plea deal, that sweetheart plea deal, but that, again, you have to blame Hunter's lawyers on that. They got cocky. They felt overconfident, and that really backfired and put them in the position that, really, Joe Biden was yesterday, which is to pardon his son. Stanton may be the first, but he is unlikely to be the last to criticize the president on pardoning his son, Hunter. Now, there's others that not condemning Biden, but actually congratulating him. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. We're not just going to talk about the Hunter Biden pardon this morning. We've got plenty of other news stories. We've already had a few of them sprinkled in, some New York State issues, some local issues. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. There's also a few things dissecting the election, New York State-wise, but also the New York New York Times had an op-ed about what drove Trump's victory. There's also some really strong criticism, even by James Carville, of how the Harris campaign was run, because the question is still being asked, where did all the money go? $1.5 billion, and they were, what, $20 million in debt? They spent that in 107 days. Where did it all go? On a really historic loss, landslide loss, 1.5 billion, and 20 million. They're still trying to fundraise and dig up that money. So we'll talk about that as well. But James Carville, not happy over the weekend. Critical of the Harris campaign. And yeah, you still see a lot of people trying to blame Joe Biden. I think that's disingenuous, because they tried to prop him up and really gaslight us for 3.5 years that he was all okay, that everything was fine. And then the debate happened, and we saw in real time what we were actually dealing with. And I think that's where the problem lies, where they decided to say, okay, now he's no longer mentally fit. He was for the last 3.5 years when we told you that over and over again. Now you saw it with your own eyes, so he's out. And then and even John Fetterman, the Democrat senator, from Pennsylvania, saying you can't have it both ways, Nancy Pelosi. You can't act like the godmother, the godfather type character that, remember, she said we did what we had to do to take him out, and then say, well, he waited too long. You can't have it both ways. You can't protect him for 3.5 years and then say it was his fault. It was all his fault. If you're surrounded by people that say you got it, you're gonna do great, and then they turn on you and say, no, you should have got out sooner. You should have known better. We also have, what do you think about this one? And I'm just going to say this before we go to break, and we'll get to it a little bit later on in the program. There is a report coming out that is suggesting that George Clooney is furious with Obama, believing that he was used as a patsy for Kamala's defeat. All right, we'll see what you think about that. George Clooney not happy with his buddy Obama. But we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We're Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Today's topic, increasing fuel costs continue to drive up inflation, making it harder to afford everything from food to home heating.
Here at Hustlesons, we know the only way to beat inflation is to fight inflation. So we're fighting back with zero interest financing and big cash rebates. Get a 4-person hot tub for your family for as little as $100 per month and pay zero interest. Or save up to $3,000 on a fabulous salt system hot tub. And of course, you will always get Hustlesons' unbelievable service. Don't let inflation fears kill your dreams. Fight back with Hustlesons. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hustlesons.
Sheldon and Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon.
Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Now, Representative Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat from Texas, was on MSNBC's Prime saying congratulations to Joe Biden. Quote, "Way to go, Joe. Let me be the first one to congratulate the president for deciding to do this, because at the end of the day, we know that we have a 34-count convicted felon that is about to walk into the White House. For anyone that wants to clutch their pearls now because he decided he was going to pardon his son, I would say take a look in the mirror, because we also know that when it comes to this cabinet has more people accused of sexual assault than any incoming cabinet probably in the history of America. So we are living in unprecedented times. We know that this was completely political as someone who serves on the Oversight Committee. This was gamesmanship the entire time. And we know that this investigation had been taking place for 5 or 6 years. We know that Hunter had accepted responsibility, and it was the oversight committee that was pushing to try to say no, it wasn't enough. And ultimately, the judge decided to reject the plea. So consider everything that took place, and considering where we are in this country, I say way to go, Joe. Talk about projection. All these, so somehow it's Trump's fault that he has to pardon his son who was convicted of crimes. And Representative Crockett saying that this has been investigated for 5 or 6 years, then why the nearly 10-year time frame where he cannot be charged with any crimes known or unknown? I mean, that, talk about a blanket pardon. I didn't even know you could get that blanketed of a pardon. So way to go, Joe. We've got a felon going into the White House, so why not pardon your son, is what essentially Jasmine Crockett, representative from Texas, is saying. A Watergate prosecutor, Jill Wine-Banks, was on MSNBC's Prime as well. It sounds like they got a lot of quotes from MSNBC Prime that she was thrilled President Joe Biden pardoned his son Hunter Biden. I'm relieved and thrilled that he did it. This was one of the cases that called out clemency. Hunter Biden, first of all, would not ever be prosecuted for the gun crime, but for his last name. Second of all, he was addicted, and that was a cause of his actions. He has now been sober for many years, and this is a time when it was really appropriate for a grant of clemency. I also hope that President Biden will also issue preemptive pardons to all of those people threatened by the injustice of what will become the Department of Justice in the Trump administration. That includes Jack Smith and all of his staff, many Department of Justice lawyers. It includes President Biden himself, although he doesn't know that anyone can legally pardon. Let me reword that, excuse me. Although we don't know that anyone can legally pardon themselves, we will need a pardon because he is going to be harassed and charged for no crimes whatsoever. Donald Trump has promised that. Isn't it interesting, you hear those complaints that, oh, he's going to go after this person, that. Who was it that initially started the lawfare, and it was used against who? Their opponents, Donald Trump. So it's interesting now there's outrage. It's something that has not been done, something that hasn't even been really hinted towards. And now there's anger. When we saw in real time, in action, the lawfare used against the former president, now president-elect Donald Trump. So it's interesting to now scream that the sky is falling when no one's seen all that outrage for the last, well, you could say the last 4 years, but even longer, of the lawfare used against Donald Trump. So the Watergate prosecutor, Wine-Banks, said she's thrilled. Jill Wine-Banks, thrilled that Biden pardoned Hunter and should pardon himself next. We've got in the next hour, we're going to talk a little bit more about this and a couple things about the campaign. Then we're going to take a look at Donald Trump's cabinet and how that is shaping up. Man, this show is going quick, isn't it? Thank you to everybody joining us. Again, just as a reminder, on Wednesday's program, we're going to be talking with Sheriff Jim Allard. We look forward to that because last week we had the big story in regards to the lawsuits against him, or the lawsuits that were filed with the county, the fight that Jim Allard had with Steuben County, and he was victorious on every single case. So it was a big news day for the sheriff, who's been going through this for quite some time, the county spending nearly $200,000 on this case that was essentially thrown out. So we look forward to talking with Sheriff Allard on Wednesday and getting the scoop there. Thursday, former Congressman Joe Sempolinski, current, I should say, Assemblyman-elect, and then on Friday, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. So mark your calendars and get your questions in. Right now, we got to take a short break. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 on the way. Stay with us.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review. Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron...
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC. And we are back. Having a little technical difficulty there on my button thing here. But welcome back to Frankly Speaking, our number 2. It's hard to believe how quickly this program's going. So much to discuss, so much to talk about. We're going to take that break now that the buttons are all back up and running. We will be right back. Stay with us.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
Hustling plus overbooked, plus bustling, plus cleaning overlooked. It all adds up. With Mary Maid's professional cleaning services, you'll have one less thing to worry about. Mary Maid's.
There we go, hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you for joining us. We've been talking this morning about the breaking news last night that Hunter Biden was pardoned, of course, by the President, Joe Biden. The New York Post editorial board says there's only one true statement in President Biden's distasteful, hypocritical pardon of his son. Quote, "It is clear that Hunter was treated differently," end quote. Indeed, had Hunter not been the son of a vice president, he would... Now, why did that do that? He would not have had this happen. Let's take a step back because I don't know why that button keeps doing that. Had Button not been the son of the president and the presidential candidate, his numerous crimes of tax evasion, failing to register as a foreign agent, and gun violations would not have been delayed and ignored, nor would he have been given a sweetheart plea deal. Had Hunter not been the son of a Democrat whom the media desperately needed to beat Donald Trump, his unethical misdeeds would not have been ignored by journalists. He would not have been able to earn millions as a political fixer for companies and con artists around the world, if you want to take it back that far. Had Hunter's family and friends not been plugged into the deep state, then the truth about his abandoned laptop would not have been censored by Facebook and Twitter. Yes, and isn't that very interesting when you go back to that? Musk now, of course, owning Twitter, which is called X. But so important to remember back when they censored that story right before, weeks leading up to the election back in 2016. But so yes, Hunter Biden was treated differently. His entire life has been that of a spoiled man-child who has coasted on his family name, dodged all responsibilities, and failed upward, according to the New York Post. Joe Biden had told lie after lie about Hunter's misdeeds. It was all, quote, Russian disinformation, except everything was true. It was attacking him because of his addictions. Certainly, one would question why a Ukrainian gas company and Chinese energy executives would pay Hunter Biden $11 million when he was, by his own admission, a barely functioning crack addict. But no one was attacking or mocking his struggles with drug abuse. They were questioning what Hunter was promising in terms of his access to the White House and why Joe Biden didn't tell him to stop it. Hunter's plea deal wasn't thrown out because of political pressure. It was tossed because a shocked judge realized no ordinary citizen would ever be given the deference given the president's son. It was a political deal meant to cover up the entire sordid episode ahead of an election. And now, months later, as Joe Biden shambles to the door, all the lofty talk about trusting the justice system and accepting norms goes out the window. All the cases against Donald Trump are righteous and warranted, but the case against Hunter Biden, he claims, is simply political. Quote, "No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's case can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out because he is my son. And that is wrong," Biden wrote. Well, 50% of the country just voted against the administration. We would imagine many of them qualify as unreasonable. Hunter Biden is a hustler. The Democrats know it. The media knows it. They just chose to look the other way. Just like they chose to look the other way on Joe Biden's health issues. Now Hunter's getting away with it. Why? Because not all of us have a president for a father who could do what just weeks ago he denied he would do. Hunter Biden has been treated differently, and it is a scandal, writes the New York Post editorial board. But like Miranda Devine said, and she also works at the New York Post, she said, we all knew Joe was going to pardon Hunter. This isn't anything surprising or new. But it's fitting that the president would break another promise to the American people, Miranda Devine said. We always knew Joe Biden would pardon his son Hunter, no matter how many times he promised he wouldn't. And we said this on the program, that I don't even think there would be that many people holding it against him. The only problem is he lied about it so excessively over and over and over again. That's why, like one viewer said earlier, it doesn't come as a surprise. It was a matter of when, not if. So it is fitting that one of the final acts of his presidency before leaving office was to break yet another promise to the American people, Devine said. Thus, on Sunday night, the president issued a statement from the White House declaring that he had just signed a full and unconditional pardon for Robert Hunter Biden, who's 54. The pardon Joe vowed he would never give comes just days before Hunter was due to be sentenced over a felony gun conviction in Delaware in June and California felony tax fraud in September, to which he pleaded guilty on the first day of his trial. Joe claims that Hunter was selectively and unfairly prosecuted. It's an amusing twist. The president explained away all his lies to the American people by lying about his lying. Quote, "For my entire career, I have followed a simple principle. Just tell the American people the truth." Joe told reporters back in June, after Hunter was convicted of felony gun charges in Delaware, that he definitely would not pardon his son. With a truthful president, that would be the end of it. But with a fabulous plagiarist Pinocchio currently in the job, it meant little, said Miranda Devine. The same for the prepared assurance of the know-nothing Karine Jean-Pierre from the White House podium. The no pardon would be forthcoming. No wonder Hunter looked so smug over the weekend when he was photographed out and about in Nantucket with his dad and the rest of the Biden clan. For a guy facing 2 prison sentences, he was chewing gum and acting like he didn't have a care in the world. Hours after Joe and Hunter dined at that restaurant, ironically, the restaurant's called the Brotherhood of Thieves, not making that up. The Washington Post published excerpts Saturday from a document written by the first son's lawyers that made the emotional case for his pardon. Since his father was the only person on the planet with the power to pardon Hunter, at least until his presidency ends on January 20th, the 52-page paper would seem to have been written for an audience of one, the Oval Office guy vacationing with his family in Nantucket. But why would Hunter and his lawyers feel the need to leak the heartstrings-tugging document when he was right there with his dad every day, hanging out in the borrowed mansions of private equity billionaire David Rubenstein, poking around in bookstores, buying anti-Semitic books, that actually happened over the weekend as well, and watching the town Christmas tree lighting? Clearly, the document was a carefully crafted excuse created to help Joe fool the American people into believing that Hunter was a victim of political persecution, who suffered due to his father's power and influence. Nonetheless, we've had, it's enough to quote Miranda Devine, but I thought it was an interesting point. But the American people understand, as they proved on Election Day when they elected Trump in a landslide, despite the lawfare. That's why the news of Hunter's pardon is the least surprising news of the decade. Nobody believes a word of a Biden. But it is interesting, the media covered this up, censored it in many ways, the story right from the beginning. It was interesting when the story finally broke, when that one judge said no one else would ever get a plea deal like this. And the media had to cover it. Remember watching the coverage at that time, and the media had to catch up their viewers, their readers, whatever the case may be, because they hadn't reported on it. It was very much like Joe Biden's mental issues, health issues, that it was being covered up. You don't think of the White House reporters and the people in the White House knew how Joe Biden was acting, but again, covering it up, and now blaming him for staying in too long, and same here, covering up the Hunter story, but it comes as no surprise. So we're going to move on, though I will, of course, read your comments if you want to keep weighing in on it, but it was a kind of a very predictable story. I just didn't know when he was going to do it, but we had the feeling that he was going to do it and not leave it in the hands of Donald Trump, who said he would be interested in hearing him out, maybe pardoning him in the interest of healing the divide in this country. I don't know what would have come of that. I mean, there's no way to know now anyway. It doesn't matter. But we're going to talk about a little bit more about Biden in general, the lame duck president, but also a few things here about Harris's campaign. And we've got a lot on Trump because we've been talking about the attack. And it's a steady drumbeat when it comes to the attack on Kash Patel. he was picked to lead the FBI. They're saying he might go after some of Trump's enemies. He's wanted to do that in the past, which is interesting because that's what we talked about all morning long. And, since the program went on the air, the lawfare used against the president. But we'll talk about that. Let me know what your thoughts are on the Hunter Biden pardon. Coming up next. I asked a question, and we'll talk about this here in just a little bit. George Clooney, not really even a question, just your thoughts on it. George Clooney is furious with Obama for using him as a patsy for Kamala's defeat. That's according to inside sources. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. So a look back a little bit at the election. But we got to take that short break, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
The holiday season has arrived, a time where more than ever our thoughts turn gratefully to those who serve our community and those all around us. May the holiday season end the present year on a cheerful note and make way for a fresh and bright new year. Here's wishing you a happy holidays. This holiday greeting is brought to you by our friends at Tom South Corning Collision, Shedden's Wholesale, Suburban Propane, Corning Building Company, Empire Bricks, Hector Wine Company, and Apple Ridge Senior Living.
Wow, you found it.
I did.
The History of Water Part 6? I've been dying to read this.
I know, honey.
I always wanted that book.
At Culligan, we get that most people don't think about water like we do, and that's okay. You see, when we install one of our high-efficiency water softeners, we're thinking about hard water and limescale buildup, so you can just think about longer-lasting appliances and softer skin and hair. At Culligan, we think about your water, so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
Name something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Sharing the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is the Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. A little bit here, looking back at the election, and it ties in with Joe Biden's pardon to his son Hunter. Because if you remember, that story, of course, being censored on social media right before the 2016 election and continued to be kind of buried by the media. But James Carville torches the Harris campaign for almost unfathomable damage inflicted on the Democrat brand. Well, even if you look at the optics, Democrats have always had kind of that label of being big government spenders. And then you see in her campaign, in 107 days, she blows $1.5 billion with no results. Very reminiscent of government spending in some ways. But anyway, Democrat fundraisers are upset at Harris, who lost the election to Donald Trump, according to longtime strategist James Carville, the Raging Cajun. During Thursday's episode of Politics War Room, Carville criticized Harris's campaign, saying, quote, "The resistance is going to have trouble raising money. These fundraisers are burnt." Yes, imagine knowing how much of your money was wasted, especially when you start to learn that millions were going to people like Oprah Winfrey and the performers that she had at the various fundraisers and at the various rallies. You think about the money being spent there. So if you're, I'm not even talking big money. Big money is very upset as well. But even if you're the little person that said, you know, I don't have a ton to give, but I want to give a little bit because I want to see Harris win, and you gave $100, $200, which might greatly affect your bank balance with the way the economy is. It may have been a struggle that month to pay a different bill or to put groceries on the table. But you wanted it because you believed in that cause. And then you find that she wastes $1.5 billion. You find out where some of the money was going to. It's got to be, you just got to be outraged. They're really, we'll say, mad right now. And the damage that the 2024 campaign has done, the damage that this decade has done to the Democratic brand is almost unfathomable. Almost unfathomable. A few days after the election, the Harris campaign was still asking donors for money, I think up until recently. Sources said Harris's campaign fell $20 million in debt during the last week of her campaign. She raised nearly $1.5 billion. Harris told donors and the Democratic National Committee's finance directors during a call. This was reported by The Hill. But this is back to James Carville. But I'm telling you, without complete transparency, the campaign, we think, raised $1.5 billion. Okay, so we know that future forward, the last we saw was $900 million. So we can assume that they got to $1 billion before election. That's $2.5 billion. He then questioned if anyone knew where the money went and said she knew places to look. Social media users were quick to share their opinions on Carville's comments. One person stating, you stink as a candidate when $2.5 billion, and it's supposed to be $1.5 billion, can't buy you the presidency. Democratic Party seems to be fading as fast as the legacy media, almost like they're linked and going down together. So James Carville saying unfathomable damage to the Democratic brand. And as I mentioned, George Clooney, very upset. This is according to a report that the bromance, as they call it, between George Clooney and Barack Obama is reportedly on the rocks, with the Hollywood star said to be furious with Obama for setting him up as the patsy to end Joe Biden's career and then absorb the blowback following Kamala Harris's election defeat. Well, and there's something to be said there, because you knew Nancy Pelosi didn't want to take any of the credit. She did at first. And then, of course, with the defeat of Harris, she was distancing herself from that decision to oust Biden. So it's interesting. George Clooney doesn't want to be the one blamed with it. An unnamed entertainment industry source told Radar Online, quote, George is furious with Obama for disappearing after the election disaster and leaving him holding the bag for pushing the plan with his Hollywood pals. George feels duped and vows he's not going to be anyone's political water boy anymore. Ooh. Now, given Clooney's friendship with Obama, many pundits assume the op-ed was written not only with Obama's approval, but at Obama's behest, with the former president seemingly using his Hollywood buddy as the hitman to stick a knife in Biden's political career. After Biden stepped down, Clooney endorsed Kamala Harris and even recorded a commercial aimed at guilt-tripping working-class men into voting for her. It didn't work, as we know. President-elect Donald Trump prevailed. Clooney now feels like Obama set him up to be the fall guy. Quote, George feels he stepped up and took a bullet for the team, and now everyone's complaining about the bloodbath. Lots of celebrities like Beyonce were on the campaign trail pumping up Kamala, but George became the face of the Hollywood liberals by directly calling for Biden to end his campaign and throwing the whole process into chaos. He thinks Obama should come forward and say that George did the right thing and it isn't his fault that it didn't work out. But he doesn't expect that will be forthcoming, and it left George feeling like a patsy. You could understand. I mean, he was used, a political tool in that scenario, used to oust Biden, and now Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Obama, they want to distance themselves from that disastrous decision. And I'm not saying that Biden would have necessarily won, but you'll never know. And he can always say he was the only one that was proven to be able to beat Donald Trump. So, but now Democrat Senator Chris Murphy, again, the hypocrisy in this, someone that helped prop up Biden, say how healthy he was mentally fit, everything was fine. And then when it became evident to the American people after that debate that he was not, now everybody's saying he waited too long to get out. On Meet the Press on Sunday, Senator Chris Murphy said, I think some of the most important things that Joe Biden did were taking on the big corporations, going after their monopoly power, and helping consumers with some of the really erroneous fees and gimmicks that those companies used to hurt us. I wish the Biden campaign and the Harris campaign talked more about what they did to break up corporate power. So I think Democrats need to be much more aggressive in making this case. That power has been concentrated and it needs to be returned to the regular Americans. We need to be able to invite a lot of different Americans into the conversation, regardless of wherever they line up with Democrats on every single social and cultural issue. Let's build a bigger tent. Well, host Kristen Welker said very quickly, Nancy Pelosi said that President Biden stayed in this race too long. Should he have gotten out much sooner? Again, this is someone that helped prop up Biden for 3.5 years. Senator Chris Murphy saying, in hindsight, he made the decision to stand down. Yes, of course, it would have been better for President Biden to have made that decision earlier. I think there is no question about it. Joe Biden can't catch a break when it comes to everybody turning on him. But George Clooney is not happy. Now, Senator Murphy didn't call out George Clooney specifically, but your thoughts on, because remember, we joked, but in all seriousness, the Clooney factor was the fact that he helped oust, and at least get the conversation going, President Biden from his re-election campaign. And we kind of joked about it because saying that the way George Clooney goes, so goes the country. I thought it was overhyped to begin with, but now he is being blamed as kind of the face of the Hollywood liberals who ousted a man that had proven himself to be able to beat Donald Trump. All right. There's also one. Do I have time? No, we got a couple other things about the campaign and a quick update on Joe Scarborough. But stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. We'll be right back.
Hustling, plus overbooked, plus bustling, plus cleaning overlooked. It all adds up. With Mary Maid's professional cleaning services, you'll have one less thing to worry about. Mary Maid's. Relax. It's done. Plus too busy, plus bustling, plus in a tizzy. It all adds up. With Mary Maid's professional cleaning services, you'll have one less thing to worry about. Mary Maid's. Relax. It's done.
Is it most important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
These walls and windows hold me tight. The warm embrace we all call home. My neighbors watch over one another. This little street is a land of liberty of its own, where I always have a place to go. I'm free to call this place my own. We all deserve a place to call home.
That's an American dream.
The Big Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. A couple comments. Hunter was already pardoned by his dad when he was busted at the Naval Academy. Comment from a different viewer. I'm wondering if there's also a timing reason for the surprise Hunter pardon. Could something like a major event or action be on the horizon that could have kept him from pardoning him? I don't know. One thing I would say is this is normally kind of a slower news cycle around this time of year. So there may have been that, especially doing it on Sunday. I'm not sure. But back to the media for just a moment. I wanted to give you this update. Did you see that MSNBC political analyst David Jolly appeared to take a shot at his fellow hosts on MSNBC, Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough? We didn't wake up after the election and think, I'm upset because I was wrong. We're upset because we know we're right. But we're on the losing side of this battle. And so what does that mean for a responsible media, for a responsible electorate, for a responsible Democratic Party in this environment? Don't just say we're going to give equity to Donald Trump, which some people are doing in the Democratic Party in the media among the electorate. No, that's absolutely wrong. You can't do that. Forgive me for saying this. You can't go to Mar-a-Lago. You can't do it. That's going to get me in trouble. You can't do that. You have to hold Donald Trump accountable for being wrong. You have to hold all of his allies accountable for being wrong, even if that means you're in a losing environment and you're threatening your own liberty and your own security as an American. Wow. Well, first of all, taking a shot at Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough, it's interesting, but also you see what we'll be dealing with the media for the next 4 years, saying you don't have to be fair. You don't have, and this is not new. I mean, the New York Times said this back in 2016, that we don't have to be fair because we believe Trump to be that dangerous. In this case, this false notion that he's going to go around and put you in some type of harm's way, threaten your liberty and your security as an American makes no sense whatsoever. But again, the media's idea of always being focused on themselves is, of course, he's going to go after me at MSNBC. Of course, he's going to go after me. I'm Rachel Maddow, whatever the case may be. But that gives you a little bit of insight into how angry they are and how they'll continue that push and that divide and go after former president, now President-elect Donald Trump. All right. Now, the New York Times, and I had mentioned this earlier in the program, they wrote an op-ed that argues resentful men, the manosphere, and overall anger led to Trump's victory. The piece, written by Sarah Bernstein, argued our cultural narratives still reflect the idea that a woman's status can be elevated by marrying a more successful man, and a man's diminished by pairing with a more successful woman. The op-ed was titled, How Our Messed Up Dating Culture Leads to Loneliness, Anger, and Donald Trump. And it noted that men and women's fortunes were trending in opposite directions. After Trump was declared the winner over Harris, many have blamed his victory on sexism, misogyny, and racism. Quote, now that women are pulling ahead, the fairy tale has become increasingly unattainable. This development is causing both men and women to backslide to older gender stereotypes and create a hostile division between them that provides fuel for the exploding manosphere. With so much turmoil in our collective love lives, it's little wonder Americans are experiencing surging loneliness, declining birth rates, and as evidenced by Donald Trump's popularity with young men, a cascade of resentment that threatens to reshape our democracy. This coming from the New York Times op-ed, what looks to be an article on dating, even needing to take that experience, or taking that opportunity, I should say, to attack Trump. Interesting. All right, we're going to talk a little bit here about, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the picks that Donald Trump has been making for his cabinet. We also have a few updates on what it will look like. Will that go through? I do have a couple things here about, more about Biden, but I've been promising I would get to this all morning long. Looking at New York State, New York State is showing cracks in the blue wall. Democratic registration dropped 7% in New York City and 4% across the Empire State between 2020 and 2024. The latest sign of dissatisfaction with liberal policies that some pundits believe are fueling a national push to the right. Well, yeah, especially New York, when you look at New York City specifically, and that's what we talked about, the inroads that Donald Trump made during this election and the possibility, if we get a good candidate in there, a Republican defeating Governor Hochul. But if you look at the disastrous policies of New York State in general, as you see by the immigration issue in the city, as you see by the high taxes, the people leaving, the mass exodus, as it were, Democrats saw registration plummet 258,612 in the city from November of 2020 to November of 2024, when there were 3.4 million voters registered to the Democratic Party. That accounted for much of the 271,322 statewide decline in party enrollment, as the GOP saw a modest gain of 2% enrolled statewide, bringing Republican Party totals to slightly more than 3 million, according to the hard numbers. But the biggest development was a 12% bump in registered voters without a party in the state, and the so-called blanks or independents. Non-affiliated voters surged as well. The data showed there was a potential to grow a GOP alliance, independent alliance, as results in the presidential election indicate. That's according to voting experts. President-elect Donald Trump drew 44% of the vote and blew New York to 56% for Vice President Harris, the highest vote for a Republican candidate in 36 years. Democrats nationwide are sifting through the carnage of losing the White House in both the House and Senate in the GOP. In 2022, Democrat Kathy Hochul won the race for governor by just 6 percentage points over Republican Lee Zeldin. Across election districts, the share of people registered recently with no party is highly correlating with the share of those voting for Trump in 2024, said CUNY Graduate Center political science professor John Mollenkopf. The shifting registration pattern clearly shows some degree of dissatisfaction with the Democrat Party and an openness to voting for the Republican candidate. But it doesn't indicate that the voters have joined the Republican Party. So this is a challenge to the Democrats and an opportunity for the Republicans, but they haven't closed the deal. Democrats still hold a huge enrollment advantage, 6.54 million, more than the Republicans and independent registered voters combined. But making that leeway that we've been talking about on this program, the Democrat enrollment dropping in New York from 2020 to 24 is an ominous election sign as we near the gubernatorial race, which will be interesting to see who the Republicans put up with this opportunity. Ed Cox said Democrats are bleeding and losing. Ed Cox is a state Republican Party chairman, saying we are gaining and independents are gaining. He said the one-party rule brought New York higher taxes and soft on crime policies, such as the cashless bail law, and the state continues to lose population. So just an update there on something as we dissect what happened in the election season. Back to a little bit here about Donald Trump. I can't believe this show is going so quickly. Donald Trump back at the golf course. There were some talks that they may kind of discourage him from playing a lot because of the security issue. Of course, they had that second attempt on his life at the golf course. Well, Donald Trump is back on his Palm Beach golf course, and he was with Lindsey Graham, Steve Witkoff, and Steve Wynn. Interesting. President-elect Donald Trump was back on the links at his Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida on Sunday with players including South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham and real estate investor Steve Witkoff. Las Vegas magnate Steve Wynn was also at Trump's club at this get-together. Sources have said that Wynn, who's allegedly been an advisor to the Trump transition team, has been eyeing a new Palm Beach property after he sold a $66 million mansion in 2023 to coffee magnate Bob Stiller. Enough about him. But back out on the golf course. Now we know that Wynn was involved heavily, if I'm not mistaken, with the fundraising for Donald Trump. All right, we do have to take a quick break. I see we're going to talk about Trump's transition when we come back. I see that we have some comments. What do you think so far about those he has chosen for his transition, for his key administration positions? You've got the border czar, of course, Tom Homan. You've got Susie Wiles as his chief of staff, Pete Hegseth, Defense, Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, John Ratcliffe as CIA, Lee Zeldin at EPA, Government Efficiency, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, National Security Advisor Mike Walls, United Nations Ambassador Elise Stefanik, Linda McMahon is on education, Tulsi Gabbard on national intelligence, the state, Marco Rubio, Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, Steve Witkoff, who he was playing golf with, that's why I mentioned it, Middle East Envoy, Health and Human Services with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Veterans Affairs, Doug Collins, Doug Burgum, and Interior, Energy, Chris Wright, Sean Duffy at Transportation, Howard Lutnick at Commerce, Pam Bondi as Attorney General, Scott Bissett as Treasurer, Lori Chavez Dreamer of Labor, Management and Budget, Russ Voigt, Scott Turner at Housing and Urban Development, Brooke Rollins, Agriculture, and James Greer, Trade Representative. There's a couple spots left, like Science Advisor and Small Business Administration. But over the weekend, and we heard there's so much pushback about Kash Patel leading the FBI. We're going to talk about that as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Enrollment is open in New York State of Health. And getting quality health insurance is easier and more affordable than you think. We're here to help. Visit nystateofhealth.ny.gov or call us today.
Getting the right representation.
It matters.
Hiring a law firm whose focus is motor vehicle accident cases.
It matters.
Hiring a firm with the experience and resources to maximize your recovery.
It matters.
William Mattar is the largest motor vehicle accident firm in New York State. We got that way by winning. If you're hurt in a car, it matters who you hire. Call William Mattar. Visit WilliamMattar.com.
The holiday season has arrived, a time where more than ever our thoughts turn gratefully to those who serve our community and those all around us. May the holiday season end the present year on a cheerful note and make way for a fresh and bright new year. Here's wishing you a happy holidays. This holiday greeting is brought to you by our friends at Tom South Corning Collision, Sheddon's Wholesale, Suburban Propane, Corning Building Company, Empire Bricks, Hector Wine Company, and Apple Ridge Senior Living.
Oh, better tasting is better for the planet?
That's great, sir. Can I take your order?
Oh, number 3.
At Culligan, we get that most people don't think about water like we do, and that's okay. You see, when we install our drinking water and softening systems, we're thinking about filtering contaminants and the minerals that make water hard. So you can just think about softer, cleaner, better tasting water. At Culligan, we think about your water, so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
I'm an actor in an ad that was given 12 seconds to remind you that if you're high, just don't drive. Because if you feel different, you drive different. It's illegal to drive high everywhere anyway.
The Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security today for all your business and home security needs. Let's go through some comments as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Comments from viewers talking about the New York Times and that article, Bias Against Trump. The bright side of their continued bias is that this propaganda machine will eventually just fade away due to the fact that sensible people will stop buying the newspaper. Thank you very much. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Oops, let me hit my wave button. What a shocker. Hunter was pardoned. My question is, why do you need to be pardoned if you are innocent of a crime? Isn't that what we are continually told? Yes, that's a very good point. Yes, yeah, great point. Next up, a comment from a different viewer. Biden pardoning his son is wrong in so many ways. He shouldn't be allowed to pardon his son or any direct family members. And finally, a comment from a different viewer. The only thing that Trump is dangerous to is the deep state. Thank you very much. Bernie Sanders admits that, quote, Elon Musk is right and is backing Doge if it does make major cuts in a certain department. Senator Bernie Sanders, turned heads Sunday with his support for President-elect Donald Trump's planned new Department of Government Efficiency, providing it takes aim at the Pentagon's cushy budget. Of course, that's the direction they always want to go. Elon Musk is right. The Pentagon, with a budget of $886 billion, just failed its 7th audit in a row. It lost track of billions. Last year, only 13 senators voted against the military-industrial complex and a defense budget full of waste and fraud. That must change, said Bernie Sanders. Trump had announced shortly after winning last month's election that tech mogul Elon Musk and biotech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, who served as the co-head of Doge until it concludes its work by July 4th, 2026. Now, Doge is not actually a government department, but instead an outside organization that will coordinate with the White House and Office of Management and Budget to root out waste. Sanders, along with many progressives, has long been an outspoken critic of the U.S. defense spending, which he panned as bloated and wasteful. Last month, the Department of Defense announced it had failed its 7th independent audit in a row, which has troubled both Republicans and Democrats. The department has been authorized to receive $824.3 billion in government money during the 2024 fiscal year. Wow. 7th failed audit. Interesting, though, that there could be some agreement there between Bernie Sanders and Elon Musk, saying that Elon Musk is right if he takes one of these major cuts, includes the Pentagon. Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, who seems to be an up-and-coming star, doesn't he? Everybody's talking about border czar Tom Homan. He praised Kristi Noem over the weekend. We've heard some attacks going against Noem, that being perhaps one of the more difficult nomination process, I should say, and the whole confirmation process. Her name, Pete Hegseth, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a few others that unfortunately even some Republicans don't look as if they'll support, but time will tell on that. Border czar Tom Homan praised Kristi Noem, who is President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Homeland Security, after meeting with her, saying she understands what it takes to tackle the migrant crisis. He's very confident she's going to do a great job. I briefed her on many of my plans and my thoughts. She asked very, very detailed questions, so she understands. She has a few ideas of her own I think will add to what we're trying to do. So I think she's a fast learner and she's engaged 100%. I think she is a great pick. Kristi Noem got some pushback. Tulsi Gabbard as well. I skipping over some of my list I was just thinking about, but Kristi Noem is going to do a great job, according to the new border czar. Boy, the attacks on Kash Patel, the former chief of staff to the defense secretary, Trump picked him for the FBI. And every headline has said something to the effect of conspiracy theorist, Trump picks MAGA loyalist. Again, why wouldn't Trump pick someone that is loyal to his cause? No one builds an administration around themselves that are going to fight him and disagree with what he rightfully believes the American people voted him in a second term for. But conspiracy theorist Kash Patel, this is according to The Guardian, deep state critic, and that's what I keep hearing, the so-called deep state. I heard that on the news this morning, someone referring to it in that way, the so-called deep state, or use the term deep state without wanting to admit exactly what they see with their own eyes. But deep state critic who has threatened to shut down agency headquarters could face a tough confirmation battle. It's a shame more people in Washington are deep state critics. But Donald Trump's plan to nominate as FBI director the, quote, deep state conspiracy theorist Kash Patel, a critic of the Bureau who has threatened to fire its top echelon and shut down the agency's headquarters, is facing blowback in Congress as U.S. senators begin to flex their muscles ahead of a contentious confirmation process. Politicians from both main parties took to the Sunday talk shows to express starkly divergent views on Patel, whom Trump announced on Saturday as his pick to lead the most powerful law enforcement agency in the United States. The move is dependent on the incumbent FBI chief, Christopher Wray, who Trump himself placed in the job back in 2017, either being fired or resigning. It's already clear that confirming Patel through the U.S. Senate is likely to be less than plain sailing. Mike Rounds, Republican senator from South Dakota, indicated that Patel could face a tough confirmation battle. It seems like every pick that Donald Trump makes, with maybe the exception of Marco Rubio, it's going to be a tough battle. Why would that be the case? Well, I think the reason is there are some Republicans that haven't learned, that are used to being on the losing side of things and don't want to be in the catbird seat, so to speak. The senator also emphasized the separation of powers between president and Senate, signaling possible trouble for Patel. Rounds said he gave presidents, quote, the benefit of the doubt, but he also emphasized that we have a constitutional role to play. That's the process. Other Republican senators rallied to Patel's side. Ted Cruz told CBS's Face the Nation that he believed Patel would be confirmed. Patel's a very strong nominee to take on a partisan corruption of the FBI. Isn't it interesting, just to go back to how we talk about how bad polling is, we were told not only that Kamala Harris was going to win Iowa, it looked like at one point. Don't you remember that Ted Cruz was just in the toughest race of his life, probably was going to lose to a Democrat, and then ultimately being easily victorious. Okay. Patel is a Trump loyalist who has published children's books featuring King Donald. He has long denigrated the FBI as a pillar of what he calls the deep state or the corrupt ruling class. In an interview with Sean Ryan in September, Patel vowed to shut down the FBI's headquarters in Washington, D.C., and reopen the building the following day as a museum of the deep state. He also threatened to use the power of federal law enforcement to go after those he claims are responsible for corrupting the federal government, a list of whom he published in his memoir. Jake Sullivan, Joe Biden's current national security advisor, was among that on the list. Patel called him one of the corrupt actors of the First Order. Tough talking. So they're already pushing back, thinking that he may not get through. We got to take a break. We'll talk a little bit more about Kash Patel. What do you think about that pick or any of the picks that Donald Trump has been making? But we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Now you can leave home and leave the tanks behind with Inogen, the portable oxygen concentrator that moves with you.
This little box changed my life. I can now do all those things that I want to do. You just press the button here, and there's my oxygen.
Inogen portable oxygen systems are small and light and deliver up to 12 hours of medical-grade oxygen on a single charge.
Now that I've got my Inogen, I've got my freedom back. I'm back to living again.
Try an Inogen system free for 14 days.
Call now.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. Those 9 months were also 273 days of planning. What about your daughter's first costume party? It was out of this world. And let's not forget those barbecues you plan in detail for your family and your more vegetarian by the day best friends. That surprise party for your parents' golden anniversary? You get the golden planning. The same way you plan each detail for those moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. As I mentioned, this week we have a very busy week during the Steuben Senior Services Fund section of the program. These are just the main ones, but there are others that are being added to the list. So it's going to be one of those weeks where we have sometimes 2 guests a program. But we are going to hear from Sheriff Allard on Wednesday. On Thursday, Joe Sempolinsky. And on Friday, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. A comment from a viewer. Sorry I'm late. Biden pardoned his son? I guess there are still some people above the law. No problem for being late. Yes, he pardoned him last night, late last night. I want to say around 9 o'clock. He released the official statement. I guess I'm not surprised. It doesn't really come as a surprise to me. I think we said on this program, and we didn't put it exactly this way, but it was a matter of when, not a matter of if. But yes, he did pardon Hunter Biden, even though he told us numerous times, even as recently as November the 8th, we were told that no, he would not pardon his son. Okay, back to Trump picks MAGA loyalist Kash Patel. This piece coming from The Independent. For Patel to steer the agency, current FBI Director Christopher Wray would need to resign or be fired. Okay, we know that part. Trump announced the pick saying, quote, Kash is a brilliant lawyer, investigator, and America First fighter who has spent his career exposing corruption, defending justice, and protecting the American people. The FBI will end the growing crime epidemic in America, dismantle the migrant criminal gangs, and stop the evil scourge of human and drug trafficking across the border. Now here's where the true bias in the media comes. A conspiracy theorist who wants to restrain federal law enforcement agencies, Patel has advocated for firing workers and going on a prosecution spree to fulfill Trump's promise of retribution. He is a Trump loyalist who has railed against the so-called deep state. Even among the most staunch MAGA loyalists, he is viewed as a controversial figure. If all of Trump's nominees are confirmed, Patel will be working under former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, who Trump appointed as U.S. Attorney General. I'm not going to go through. I don't know if the whole conspiracy theorist is just because he believes in the deep state and the media wants to ignore the deep state. I'm confused. What we know about him, according to Fox News, is that he's 44. He's a New York native. grew up on Long Island in Garden City and was raised by Indian immigrant parents. He earned his law degree in 2005 from Pace University before serving as a public defender in Florida's Miami-Dade area, where he tried, quote, scores of complex cases ranging from murder to narco trafficking to complex criminal crimes, financial crimes, and jury trials in state and federal courts. Patel hit the national radar during Trump's first administration, including when he worked as the National Security Advisor and Senior Counsel for the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence under the leadership of then Committee Chair Representative Devin Nunes. We already read you what Trump's comments were. Patel's name spread across news reports as he became known as the man behind the Nunes Memo, a 4-page document released in 2018 that revealed improper use of surveillance by the FBI and the Justice Department in the Russia investigation into Trump. Quote, if they had gotten it right the first place, when Devin and I and so many others were actually putting out the truth instead of serving as a disinformation machine for the left-wing agenda, there would be no reassessment, Patel said at the time. There could have done more work in the deep state without the partners in the mainstream media who are part of that deep state. So that they're saying, I like that. Some Republicans, even in the MAGA movement, believe he is too extreme. Well, we're going to wrap up the show with a couple other quick comments. But what is your thoughts about Kash Patel? Also, what are your thoughts about the Hunter pardon? Here's another comment. Lawmakers expressed doubt over Trump's plan to replace FBI's Christopher Wray. Well, it sounds like he can fire Christopher Wray, so that's not really a problem. But in their language, Wray, with Kash Patel, a staunch loyalist who has vowed to fire the agency's leadership and dramatically reshape its mission, was met with bipartisan concern that his appointment could undermine the agency's independence. Republican and Democrats alike argue that replacing Wray, who has held the job since 2017, with Patel showcases Trump's efforts to appoint close allies who espouse his views and have expressed supports for his plan to take aim at the country's justice system. Again, why wouldn't an administration want that as their goal? To do things the way that they want them done, and that you campaigned on. Appearing on This Week, Senator Mike Round said that Trump has the right to make appointments and that he was not surprised the president-elect is picking people that he believes are very loyal to himself. But he also praised Wray, calling him a very good man and saying he had no complaints or objections about the stewardship of the agency. He noted that Trump appointed Wray to a 10-year term. Quote, the message, and one that I feel very strongly about, is that there's a constitutional separation. The founding fathers did that for a reason. We will accept the president should have the people that he wants in his cabinet and on his team. Every president wants that. We give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's take that short break. Keep those comments coming in. Wrap things up. This is our last break of today's show. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox.
When you think boots, think Hesselsons. Hesselsons has the largest selection of work boots in the area. Composite and steel-toe boots, Met-Guard boots, soft-toe boots, and hikers, duty and western boots, all in one location. Hesselsons, Amara Heights. Hesselsons has men's and ladies' boots in all sizes and widths. Choose from the largest names in the industry. Danner, Carolina, Timberland Pro, Keen Utility, Thorogood, Area, and Georgia, to name just a few. Hesselsons has been locally owned and operated since 1955, so when you think local service and great selection, think Hesselsons. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsons.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is History Making. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning, wrapping up today's edition. Did you see, this is interesting, as a lot of people, us here on the program as well, talking about the tariffs that Trump has proposed. Well, Justin Trudeau flew to Florida to meet with Trump. Maybe a little nervous. Canada's prime minister said he had productive talks with the U.S. president-elect at Mar-a-Lago on Friday when the two leaders held a surprise dinner meeting. The chat occurred less than a week after Trump threatened to impose 25% tariffs against Canada and Mexico in response to an influx of fentanyl and migrants into the U.S., an accusation Trudeau feels unfairly lumps Canada in with Mexico. Now, the U.S. has seized 43 pounds of fentanyl at the Canadian border last fiscal year, compared to 21,100 pounds at the Mexican border, per the AP. So Trudeau will likely pull out all the stops to prevent tariffs from being enacted, given that the U.S. is a top customer for Canada's oil and auto industries. There's a really interesting piece. We're not going to have time to get to it, but at the New York Post editorial board, when Trump critics resist his illegal migrant crackdown, remember the nightmares he's trying to end, like that nightmare where we saw the young child trying to cross the border, the 2-year-old Salvadorian girl crossing with only a note of a phone number. Meanwhile, in New York, the Post broke the news that the illegal migrant surge has left more than 58,000 criminal asylum seekers in New York City and over 670,000 nationwide. Did you see, you know the name, New York State Senator James Skoufis? We've talked about him in the past a little bit. He's been in the legislature for a dozen years, but is virtually unknown outside of Albany and his district, which covers Orange County and the Hudson Valley. He wants to be the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. We tried the BC Beltway thing. We tried the decades-long operative thing. We tried the sort of party machine thing over and over and over again, Skoufis said in an interview last week. And here we are, where Democrats is locked out of power in Washington, facing decades of conservative dominance over the federal courts, and seemingly more depressed about Mr. Trump's imminent return to power than motivated to win back political control. All right, that does it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you for all the comments as we talked about Biden pardoning Hunter Biden ahead of his exit, his lame duck term, which is almost up. Oh, I know. National Security Advisor Sullivan, he's denied reports that Biden administration is thinking about giving Ukraine its nukes back. Outgoing National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan denied reports that the Biden administration is considering returning nuclear weapons to Ukraine after the country relinquished its stockpile 3 decades ago after the fall of the Soviet Union. That is not under consideration, no. Well, we were also told a pardon for Hunter was not under consideration. Zelensky has said, I will give up Ukrainian territory to Russia to achieve peace. If you want to stop the hot stage of the war, we should take under the NATO umbrella the territory of Ukraine that we have under our control. That's what we need to do fast, and then Ukraine can get back to the other parts of his territory diplomatically. All right, now we are officially out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Again, on Wednesday's show, Sheriff Jim Allard, Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard will be our guest. Thursday, Joe Sempolinski will be joining us. And then on Friday, we will be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. So this is a very busy week. Get those questions into me. I'd love to hear from you on all the issues of the day, but also questions for our guests, because they'll be here, most of them, for the full hour, the 7 o'clock hour. And we do have a couple other interviews that I'll highlight later in the week that will kind of sneak in there because there's so many holiday events coming up that we want to promote. So we're getting as many interviews lined up as we possibly can. So make sure you tune in every weekday morning, starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. I look forward to it already. Have a great day.
Frankly Speaking, Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs.
I'm Mary Crawford. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. that has been a wonderful gift to me to be able to have that security